Hello and welcome to our Wednesday edition of the class. You can see I'm still on the road, so trying to make do wherever I can. I'm trying to check to see we have some questions about the assignment too, so I'm going to check that and make sure, and that'll be due Thursday. It should be in your here on your homepage of Blackboard. So if you'll check that and just make sure, I think we'll be good to go. But I'll make sure I answer any questions that any of you have and we go from there. Yesterday we had Jamie Lent on the program in the class, and he talked about his stint in running a couple of all sports stations and radio and the value of radio. And remember for our test community, he talked about the. I kind of prompted him, but he talked about the presence of uh, community in radio and how local radio still has that sense of community, and that really ties them together, and it still makes them a viable type of media. Whereas don't let people tell you that radio is going away anytime soon. So one of the things that Jamie mentioned was the fact that they have got to they've got the audience right. They've got the people are looking for. He mentioned men 25 to 60 years old. He mentioned men 25 to 60, and that's kind of the sweet spot for them. And remember, we're dual product market. They've got that audience, and they want to sell that audience to different advertisers. Mentioned beer, mentioned uh, trucks, mentioned, we didn't mention it, but if you go back, probably someplace like for some of the older things that they have, hearing aids, you'll see those kind of, you'll hear those kind of things on their station. So those are the things that they've got a product to sell. They're trying to sell their product. So let's look at today an audience and audience research. So you want to make sure you have an audience. You want to be able to do the research out of your audience. I want to take you back to something that from 19 the late 90s and maybe even early 90s. So that was a show called Promised Land that aired on CBS. And I want to take you to a couple things. Like, see this little kid here. So I was in Las Vegas. I went with my wife's company for a work trip for them, and we were there. They just brought their spouses along, and so they had sessions that morning, early morning. And while my wife was away at work, I spent all of her money gambling. So when she came back to the room, she's like, "Let's go gamble." I said, "Hey, sorry, I've already spent the money." So we um, we walked around. We walked around Vegas, and as we were walking, people asked us to come in and watch this show, and it was called Promised Land. It was a pilot for a show called Promised Land. I'm showing you this kid here because we're given clickers kind of like this that I have here, and we're given clickers that you punch the green button if you like stuff, you punch the red button if you didn't like stuff. And they said, if you really like it, click it a lot. If you don't like it, click the red a lot or whatever. And if you just feel either way, don't do anything. Uh, so this little kid was not in the pilot. So I watched the pilot, and they had a little kid that was very precocious, and I'm not a big fan of the precocious kid. So every time he would come on, I would hit red, 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 red. And there was a grandmother also that I didn't like. So I would hit red, 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 red. And there was kind of this fun scene at the end, kind of touching scene near the end where Gerald McRaney, we saw him there. He gets on the bus. He's trying to get home to his family, and he tells the people on the bus, "Hey, I'm sorry about this. I got to get back to my family. I need some help. I don't normally ask for help." And he hands out. He takes his hat off and he hands it around, and everybody puts money in the hat, and so he's able to pay for his bus ride. So I thought it was kind of a fun emotional kind of scene. Not fun, but touching. So I was like, green, 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 green. Went around, finished the show, went on our Vegas vacation without being able to gamble and forgot all about it. About a year later, I noticed that CBS is putting out promo for their new season of shows. In Promised Land was something they were promoting. And I thought it was interesting in that the trailer they were using to promote the show was that scene of him walking in the bus. Um, so we said, well, we got to watch the show because we saw the pilot. And so we watched it. And this kid, Eddie Carr, was a replacement for the kid I didn't like. And then the grandmother, Celeste Holmes, she was a replacement for the grandmother I didn't like. Now, I'm not saying it was me that did that. I'm just saying that probably I wasn't the only one that didn't like the kid. I wasn't the only one that didn't like the grandmother, and so it turned into CBS looked at all the data, and they decided, all right, we gotta make some changes here, and the show was ready to go. So it's a great lesson to learn. So remember that about Promised Land, a great lesson to learn that nothing is just trotted out there in front of an audience before it's been researched, it's been evaluated, it's been investigated, and all those things. So always remember that when you're watching the show. Whenever you're watching something like American Idol and you see somebody you really like, guess what? That person's probably been tested a little bit. And these shows aren't stupid, even the reality shows. We had the guy in that was from The Bachelor. We brought him in for an event last year, and he was telling me that after talking to him, the producer said, okay, you're going to be the clean cut American, and this guy is going to be this, and this guy's going to be this. It's all because of research and what people like and what people don't like. And these places know about those. So, as part of whatever you want to do, anything you're doing in electronic media, you're trying to generate an audience. That's your goal, right? If you're a writer, you want people to read what you wrote. If you're a photographer, yeah, you might do it for the artistic value of it, but you want people to see it. If you've got a movie, you want people to see it. You have a goal of generating an audience. And again, if you have an audience, then you have something else that you can sell to somebody. So you have to understand what research goes into it, and you need to be able to interpret research data. It's funny, and we'll talk a little bit about Google and Google Analytics in the next couple of days because it's added a whole new layer of analytics and understanding social media and what you're looking at. You need to be able to see it and interpret it and understand it. The question I ask my people a lot is, so what? They'll give me hey, look at the number of people that have watched this or liked this. And I'm always asking them, so what? What does that mean? What does the total package of that mean to us as an organization? And so anything, you've got a great program. If you can't get it out, you can't get it viewed, there's a bit of a so what. Good for you. You made a great program, but there's a negative because guess what? Nobody's going to see it. So everyone, managers, programmers, advertisers, all need to know the terms and what people use and what people want to see and what their motivations are. I used to have a magazine that didn't have big numbers, but the people that read it were college graduates that had a lot of money, had a lot of disposable income, and so their lifestyle characteristics were heavy into disposable income. So it made my publication very attractive to advertisers because the people that were reading it, people that were part of it, those were the kind of people you wanted to put your product in front of as an advertiser. And so it just depends. You need to understand the data. So you might look initially and go, that publication doesn't have very many people reading it. But then you look at the type of people reading it, and it makes a difference. Use audience research to learn what programs are successfully reaching what audiences. So Jamie talked yesterday about, hey, we understand we're trying to reach males 25 to 60. We knew that talk radio, political talk radio was not working, but sports talk radio, based on the research, would. So there's really three types of data that you have. You have demographic research, which is basically the quantitative information, number of males, number of females, ages, this number of people, this age group. That's part of the demographic research. Then you have psychographic research, which is more qualitative. These are people that are going to buy a new car every 3 years. These are people that spend money on vacations. These are the people that are investing, whatever that would be, that would make up as part of psychographic research. And then you can look at things by geodemographic research, which is taking a zip code or another some way of delineation of an area geographically and saying, hey, these people in this area are likely to do this. They're likely to buy certain things. They're likely to watch certain programs. And so there's a taking characteristics and putting them by neighborhood. Generally, we live in kind of a homogenistic society, right? Where the people in my neighborhood are pretty much like me. And there's something awful about that, but there's something that researchers and advertisers really like. Hey, I'm in the 79423, so if they're trying to appeal to a certain group, they know that by going to 79423, you're going to reach a certain number of those. Electronic media demographic is best represented by ratings, which basically estimates the number of viewers or listeners or readers in a variety of age and sex, probably should be gender categories across different time periods or day parts. And we all have heard throughout our careers, our educational careers, the difference between ratings and shares, and we'll talk about that. So managers use other categories to supplement, break it down. Number of Hispanics, number of African Americans, number, whatever it would be. If you're in a different part of the country, it might be Asian. Whatever it would be, they try to break that down as well. And it's valuable because it describes not only the audience, but also the number. So you can say, hey, generally, again, let's go back to Jamie yesterday. We know that we're going to reach X number of thousand of males, 25 to 60, in these day parts. The day parts is a crucial thing as well. Psychographic research basically focuses on lifestyle characteristics, what people like, number of people in this zip code that we were looking at something the other day. There was an election last May in Lubbock about the Coliseum, and we have a zip code breakdown, so we know the people in this zip code were in favor of turning it back over to Texas Tech, and so we understand the lifestyle characteristics, what those people are looking for. So basically based on and that would be the geodemographic, but psychographic focuses on, hey, the people watching our show, 60% of them buy a new car every year. 70% of them are conservative politically. Whatever. You can do a little psychographic research. We don't care about that. And you can use a qualitative approach. Again, there's quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative would be focus groups. You put people in a room and you have them talk about, hey, I like this person, I don't like this person. Hey, I like this program, I don't like this program. Program testing, which would be what I showed you on Promised Land, where you play them a program and then get their thoughts and their opinions on it, and then call out research basically saying, okay, we're going to call you and see what you think about certain things. So you can do different things for psychographic. And then I got ahead of myself on geodemographic research. Again, we know now that, hey, if you're looking into the Coliseum information, whatever, for example, if we wanted to do something about that, the people in this area were for it, people in this area were against it, so maybe we need to go to those people and try to have a message to them. So again, zip codes is an easy way to do it. It clusters people. And basically it was developed in the 70s, and clearly it's still used a lot in advertising. So again, if you're a manager that understands data and research, you understand the need for the certain groups and why you have to use them. There's all kinds of different ways you can do it. There's trade associations and consulting firms. You can hire somebody. There's national places that do it. Nielsen is the one that, and I think this slide's going to be old and talk about Arbitron, but Nielsen also owns Arbitron. Nielsen is basically the place to go for TV habits. And so, again, we got VCRs on here. Nielsen estimates the number of people watching those and showing those, and what number of people that are watching those. And also, in some places, they have a device that they put on your television, which is called a people meter, and you don't even have to fill anything out. There's a problem with Nielsen, besides the fact, again, and you can see when this slide was done, VCRs were still video discs, and other technologies were still being talked about. In that You have to have a home phone number to be a part of it. You have to fill out a diary to be a part of it. And some of those things people just aren't going to do. And so that's the negative to something like Nielsen. Whereas a people meter, you can just say, attach it to your television, and do the research for you. And basically, they choose 5,000 households to monitor, and they're Nielsen families, and they use them across the year at different times of year. Again, don't pay attention to this. Local audience ratings come from Arbitron. Uh, that's Nielsen. Nielsen purchased Arbitron, and basically Nielsen television is 4 times a year. Nielsen radio is 2 times a year. And again, the same thing. They send diaries, they get your habits, and they look at what you're doing. There's also something called strategic media research, which offers something called AccuRatings, and they do it on the phone. They call people on the phone. The problem, again, you'll hear this a lot when you're in a ratings period. Radio stations will mention their call letters a lot. They'll mention the time of day a lot. And they want you to do that because if you're filling out a diary, they want you to remember that at 2:17 you were listening to KTTZ or whatever the station would be. So they want you to they really want you to hit that hard. And that's why they hit that hard. Here's another one that they have for the national networks. It's something called Radio's All-Dimensional Audience Research, which says basically, hey, here's the number of people listening to ESPN radio. Here's the number of people listening to Westwood One. It's a national kind of format for radio. And again, we'll go back. There's organizations, radio, cable, television. They all have their own organization. If you listen to a radio station enough, you'll hear a lot of ads brought to you by the National Radio Association. Like the Radio Advertising Bureau that tells you, called RAB, hey, here's the advantage of advertising on radio. You'll hear commercials for that, and those are done by the bureaus. And then you have consulting firms as well that do those things. A lot of places now are going into in-house research. It's becoming more common. And basically, if you do your in-house, you can subscribe to Nielsen. You can subscribe to, again, take away Arbitron and those things. You can subscribe to those, and but also do your own in-house. If you might want to say, do people like this anchor? Do people like this local program that we have? What do they like about it? What they don't like about it? You can't get that from Nielsen because it's just going to be straight numbers for who's watching and why they're watching and when they're watching. But if you want to do more, you can do some in-house research. Again, it's a strong growth area for employment in electronic media. I've got a daughter that's a sophomore at the University of Texas, and she's learning about research, and she's already finding out that it's a highly coveted area where people are looking at that. People understand what to look up, where to research, what the research means. Using research, it helps managers identify the strengths and weaknesses of your operation. Hey, we know we're really strong in the morning, and we know our competitors are stronger in the afternoon, or whatever. You can look at the research and know, okay, here's when we have a lot of people watching, and then you can look at your competitors and go, hey, here's when they have a lot of people watching. So you have to, again, understand the data and what you're talking about. So ratings, we've been through this probably a million times throughout your career. Ratings is the number of people or households of the total number of a population watching or listening or viewing a show. So look at it this way. Let's say there was 100 people in this class and 10 people were watching something. The rating would be a 10, right? 1 out of 10, 10% basically. 10 divided by 100 is 10. Share, so let's say there's 100 people in the class, but 50 people are actually watching television at that time. Share would be the 10 of the 50. So 20 would be a 20% share and a 10% rating. Share is always a higher number than rating. That's a true-false question. Share is a higher number than rating. Rating is a percentage of the total population. Share is a percentage of the population actually using the medium at that time. Again, ratings are always smaller than shares because ratings consider the entire population, while actual households or individuals using a particular medium you share. You're taking the share. So you know, hey, maybe not a lot of people are watching television at this time, but those that are, the majority of them are watching our show. Same for radio. Again, there may not be a lot of people listening late at night, but those that are listening to our program. So you might have a low rating because there's just not a lot of people using the medium at that time, but you have a higher share because the people that are using it are listening to your show. Here's a couple of other terms that you'll have. This is a radio term, average quarter hour. Radio stations like to measure in the 15-minute increments in an hour. And so it's the number of people listening to a radio station for at least 5 minutes in any given quarter hour. Again, that's why you'll hear a lot of, it's 217. And again, there's an average quarter hour rating and an average quarter hour share. Again, based on total population, based on the number of people actually using the audience, using the media. Cum persons is another radio term that represents a radio station's cumulative audience, or the estimated number of individuals reached by a radio station. That's the number of persons. Again, there's a cum rating, which is the number of persons, again, divided by the total population in a given week. So the actual term of rating and share doesn't change just with the word in front of it. Exclusive cum is the number of people, this is a radio term, that only listen to one station over a period of time. Stations like Jamie talked about yesterday, 97.3 and 100.7, they have high exclusive cums because some people, that's the only station they listen to. If you're a 50-year-old man, you're probably only listening to sports radio. So they have a lot of exclusivity. Two other things that are very important. Time spent listening is basically, hey, this person listens to the radio 27 minutes a day, or whatever the number would be. And then turnover is the number of how many times the audience completely changes during a particular time period. Go back to Jamie again. He's got a show that goes from 6 to 9 in the morning. So what he talks about at 6:15, somebody listening at 8:15 probably didn't hear it at 6:15 because there's turnover. People go to work, more people get up, and so it's a talk radio term that they use that, and that's turnover. They have to re-rack a lot of the things they talked about and talk about them again because a lot of people didn't hear it the first time. So it's like waiting tables, right? There's turnover at your table, and you've got to make sure that people are always making sure that you're taking care of the audience. Again, this new audience came in, didn't hear what you talked about an hour ago, so you've got to talk about it again. We're going to finish up here today, talk about a couple of things, and we'll finish up research tomorrow. There's a designated market area. You hear people talk about this a lot. DMA consists of the counties where the heaviest concentration viewing or listening of stations takes place. And then metro is basically the city. You'll hear a lot of times somebody talk about the Lubbock Metro, which is basically just the city, the main metropolitan area of an audience. If you look at the Lubbock audience, again, you go all the way as far as north as Plainview, south as Snyder, and so that's all part of your DMA that gets measured. But metro is something that's just the actual city itself. So I want to make sure that you know the difference between the DMA, which is basically all the counties that you're being measured by, and metro is your actual town. And here's a look at the Dallas DMA. You see that whole wide area here, the DFW DMA. Then there's a Fort Worth Metro. There's a Dallas Metro. There's actual cities that are considered part of that. My clicker will stop working. Ratings is obtained by gathering data from a sample of the audience or population. So basically, you're talking about X number of households get a diary, for example, and that sample represents the entire city. So you get the diary, and your little portion of filling it out is basically speaking for a lot of different people. So most companies involved in it use probability or random sampling to select their sample. So they'll say Lubbock is 60% Caucasian, and so we're going to hit the population by mailing to these areas. And then sometimes you go random sampling and say, okay, we're just going to pick zip codes out randomly, and we hope that we get enough of the sample. So what you're trying to do is make sure that every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected and represented. So you don't want to say, well, I live in this zip code, so I'm never going to get asked. A random sample basically means you have as much chance as anyone else. Data generated from the random sample can then be estimated for the viewing or listening preferences of a larger population. And again, you see this all the time. There's always a standard error of when you're estimating something that you'll see plus or minus 3%, plus or minus 5%. That's a standard error. So let's say there's 20 of you in the class, and let's say I'm going to send out 10 surveys, and 5 of you are going to fill them out. Well, that 5 are basically speaking for the entire 20. It's a random sample of who I decided to send them to, and then getting the 10, and then the 5 of you are going to be used to speak for the entire group. You should always be concerned about the accuracy. That's pretty standard for anything you look at. Trust but verify, right? And you just want to make sure you get the right information, and then you apply it properly. Hey, we're going to use it to generate sales. Hey, we're going to use this to brand our company. Hey, we know no one's listening to this type of program, so that's going to change the way we program in the future. Whatever it is, you've got to take the research and apply it to that. And again, it's always smart to use it accurately and don't say, hey, we have 50% of the audience in Lubbock watching our program, when it's not true. You just have to make sure you accurately assess that when you're putting out your numbers and using those, whether it be sales or marketing or whatever. So it quickly goes through that. Again, most of you have been through this type of research, ratings and shares. I'm going to clean up those slides before I put them up and take out Arbitron so that you'll make sure. So let's do this here at the end as we go through. I want to put them up here on the left when we're talking about for our test, because I want all of you to get 100 on the next test. So we need to know the difference between demographic, psychographic, and geodemographic. And remember, geodemographic is your zip codes. So demographic is the numbers. Remember those, basically straight up numbers. Psychographic is more qualitative, which talks a little bit more about likes, dislikes, those type of things, research and all those. And then geodemographic is based on your area, zip code generally being the main way to do that. There again, talk about those things. Know about the people meter, know about Nielsen, know about diaries and those type of things. Don't know about Arbitron because it's Nielsen. And then know these things. Know the difference between ratings and share. Know this. Ratings are always smaller than the corresponding shares. Know these radio terms. AQH, the ratings, the shares, the Q. Know those. Really know time spent listening. Really know turnover. And again, I'll ask it in such a way to say, hey, talk radio stations will repeat something that they talked about earlier because of what? And the answer is turnover. A lot of people are not everyone's listening throughout the entire course of your show. Then remember the difference between Metro and DMA. And I also want to talk about one more thing. So let's say that I am trying to get a great number. I'm trying to get the ideas of females 18 to 22, and only one of you responds to something. That would then be given a certain number. It'd be considered, let's say there's 100 of you, but only one of you respond. So you do something called weighting, which means you give that one reply by a multiplier. Would it be 1.2, 1.5, 2, whatever, because there's more females, 18 to 22. You only got the answers from one. So that one person, their answers are then weighted. And by weighted, I'm talking about WEIGHTED. They're given more prominence than the others because they're speaking for the entire group. So that's called a weighted sample. So remember that too. I don't have a slide for that. And I'll try to add that in to the slides for the test. So anyway, today was kind of crazy. I didn't pick really the greatest place to do this, so I apologize about that. Um, we'll ask you a discussion question about that, and then I'll fix your assignment as well. So thank you for paying attention here on today's program, and we'll talk to you